a dual sport athlete that sort of went a different path after arriving at Acadia University, and a rather unique one. Really pleased to have former national rugby player and former Acadia student athlete, Andrea Burk, join us. Hey, Andrea.
Hello, how are we doing?
Oh, great. How are you doing in these challenging times?
I am happy. I feel optimistic. There's definitely been challenges, but what I've learned from the sport of rugby is that the game and the play doesn't always go according to plan, and we need to adjust and adapt to what's in front of us.
That's the great thing about athletes, former athletes or current athletes. They know how to roll with the punches.
I would agree. Definitely agree. I think regardless of the sport, right? If there's punches in the sport or not, you can only practice to be a great athlete. And part of being a great athlete is having an adaptable mindset and to being able to react to what the game and what the play has set out in front of you.
Okay, open this up by saying that you sort of took a unique avenue. So it would be commonplace for a student to attend a university and, maybe they start out in business and they end up in kinesiology and they switch gears midstream. It is very rare to have a student athlete arrive on campus to play one sport and finish playing another sport. We've had dual sport athletes, which I consider you, but you started out in soccer in the early 2000s, but left in rugby. Just talk about how this all unfolded.
That is a great question. Looking back at that time, I always considered myself to be a little bit of a jock, right? And for that reason, kinesiology was the only answer for me to go into as far as academics. Growing up, I played every sport that was available to me, most often through the sporting system. Rugby, however, started as a community player at a local club. Before coming into Acadia, I played soccer and rugby at the provincial level. However, soccer was most definitely my mainstream primary sport at the time. I was in the development pool in 99-2000 for the national team, and that's exactly what I was recruited for, to go to Acadia. Rugby always had a little bit of a pull and allure. I always loved, there was something about the game that always pulled me to it. And, some might say in soccer I was getting a few too many yellow cards. So rugby was a good fit to make the switch over to.
So just talk about your time at Acadia, because, as we talked about, you started out playing soccer. And sometimes, again, we've seen dual sport athletes that are trying to balance playing maybe a fall sport and a winter sport. Did you just cut the cord and say, I'm leaving soccer and I'm going to play rugby?
I think it was a little bit more of a softer transition. I joined in soccer in 2000 under the helm of Laura Saunders as the head coach. The next year, Dara Moore came in. I played under Dara for 2 years. And then it was in that winter break where I just started picking up and playing touch rugby with the group in the gym over the winter. And I remember Dara seeing me do this, and she's going, "Andrea, you look like you're having so much fun out there. Why, oh, why can't you go and play soccer instead? Why are you spending your free time playing rugby?" And what was really special about the rugby team at the time is that they were fully welcoming, open arms, totally embracing to have a new person, a new face come in. I think I was officially recruited for Truro Sevens. And once that happened, I just made the switch over that break to come back as a rugby player instead of as a soccer player.
Who's a rugby coach back then?
I remember playing under Dave Burton and Ernie Bust.
Right. Okay.
Ernie first and then Dave.
Right.
And your switch over to that sport, I really don't want to use the word switch because obviously you played it in the past. But obviously you had a great run with it because you got all kinds of awards and accolades at the university level. And then we'll get into what happened post Acadia. So, that transition, again, you're no longer playing, as a young teenager in high school. You're now playing at a high level university sport. Not an easy transition.
Right. Well, honestly, I can't say enough about the university level of sport across Canada, regardless of the sport. And here's why. Because especially in a game like rugby, where I can speak to this from experience, where physicality is such an important part of the sport, is that when a high school player, a 23-year-old player, and a 25-year-old player, there's often big leaps in the level of physicality and mental preparation that goes into the game. So anytime you have a junior player jumping into a senior women's team, it was always very, very intimidating. And what the opportunity at Acadia did for me was to allow me a safe space to grow in skills, in strength, and mental attitude, to be able to come back into a senior women's role, a senior women's team, with much better prepared and to be much more successful at that level. No longer was I feeling overwhelmed. My speed could keep up with the rest of the game. My strength could keep up with the rest of the game. I didn't always feel like I was playing catch up.
I don't want to get into the national scene right now, but I mean, on the national level, in our national team, it seems as though that U Sport, what it's called now, is really a feeding system for our national program, isn't it?
Yes, again, like that is U Sport is identified as part of the pathway. Definitely on the women's side, more and more on the men's side, with the men's 15s, rugby being a part of it. Rugby 7s as well is a great field to be growing, allowing these athletes and coaches to develop their skills. And to be honest, like, it's a place where the coaches, the national team coaches or development team coaches, go to look at a great cross-Canada competition is at those U Sport national championships.
So you graduate in 2006, and 3 short years later, you're debuting for the national team. Just talk about those 3 years leading up to it.
Oh yeah, and I bet you most people wouldn't be able to guess what that looked like. And here's why. Because in my last year, I stayed around for a 5th year to do a victory lap, which is why I was my graduation years as 2006. I also took a little bit of time off, 2 semesters off throughout my time at Acadia. So my tenure there tends to be a little bit more stretched out. Anyways, my last year during that victory lap, I was able to take a couple courses around experiential education, the outdoor leader safety skills course, which was offered by Scott Henniger. Fantastic course. And I actually went into working as a backcountry guide for about 3 summers. Okay. Now this, as you can imagine, would conflict with playing and training at the provincial level to make a national team, right? Sure. So basically, during the off season, I was doing a lot of challenge courses, backcountry guiding, hiking, all of that fun stuff. And then I was playing club rugby. And through the club rugby and through our provincial championships, I was identified by the national team coaches, and I was invited to come to a Canada West camp. So at the camp, I did well enough for them to give myself a little bit of attention, pique the interest of the coaches. This was in 2009. 2008 was the first West camp. It was 2008. And basically they said, we like what you have, but we actually need to see you in competition against other athletes in your position across Canada. We need you to play for your province. We need you to compete at the national championships. Now this, even though this happened back in 2008 and we're now in 2020, does not change for athletes today. Right. Athletes who want to make the national team need to go through a CIS. Not everybody or the U Sport pathway. And if they're not a university athlete, then they need to go through their provincial pathway, right? It's all about getting experience and exposure at each of the levels. So back to my story is that at that moment, I thought, well, next year I won't go work at camp. I won't be a backcountry guide. Let's see what happens when it comes to rugby. And so I made the switch, dedicated myself to rugby, quit my bar job that was keeping me up until 2:00 in the morning so I couldn't train. I let go of a career in outdoor and experiential adventure education, not really knowing where it was going to go. And I followed through on let's see what happens with rugby. And in 2009, had a good performance throughout the summer. The national team was traveling to France and I was selected as to be a member of that team.
Wow.
The rest is history.
It is. You know what? And it's funny you're talking this story about what happened between those 3 years, and I was always kind of wondering because well, in my position, back then it's completely different what I do now, but I was kind of wondering, where's Andrea Burk? She's a 2-time AUS MVP,
right?
And she should be out there in a national team, and all of a sudden you popped up. It's like, yay.
Right. Yes. And it does take time. And right from the outside, it looks like this very linear jump for a lot of athletes to go from where they are at one point to where they are now. It's kind of like a yada, yada, yada. I'm a silver medalist
right.
for the national team. It doesn't work like that.
No,
Whereas every single day there's something new and something different and something else to take on. Right. And whether it's in an athletic sense or in a career or in a personal family relationship, what have you.
This is not a secret to anybody, but Canada obviously is a hockey nation. So, if you listen to Hayley Wickenheiser or you listen to Sidney Crosby talk about the first time that they pull on a Team Canada jersey and represent their country, take us back to 2009 in France. What's it like as a women's rugby player pulling on that Canada jersey for the first time?
Personally, I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I started my career on the wing. I just remember like taking a deep breath and hoping that this 80 minutes was going to fly by. I had a great support of another 14 players on the inside of me and, another 5 on the bench. And I remember making a tackle. France got the ball out to their open side, onto their open side winger. And as my memory serves me, I remember standing in one place about 10, 15 meters away from her, kind of doing like, what are these? And then next thing I know, my shoulder is like on her thigh and I'm tackling her and everybody's cheering. And it's like, well, fantastic. I don't know who did that, but let's try and do that again.
Nice.
Yeah. Also, too, with that, like, that's how I felt putting the jersey on. But looking back on that game and in the middle of that game, specifically in the second half, there was so much energy and so much momentum that we were, as a Canadian side, we're getting and gaining. And I still remember, like, Anna Schnell at 10 just making these awesome deliveries to connect the forwards and the backs. Kelly Russell taking, like, a huge break down the middle of the field, Julianne Zussman flying in off of the fullback, on a switch play, screaming 7, which was the call at the time. And there were so many things that were electric about that game, including the French fans who just love playing and love watching sport, whatever it is, whoever's playing. And coming off of that game, I just remember knowing, I think I can do better. I think I can do more, and I want more of this.
5 short years later, you're winning a silver medal in 2014, and then 2 years after that, you're a finalist for Player of the Year in the world. Do you ever sit back and just sort of pinch yourself a little bit and go, I can't believe this is what's happened to me?
Yeah, that was an interesting run, and I think the best way I can describe it is rarely did I have at that time my sights set on a World Cup final. I had my sights set on my feet on the ground, just one more step. Because if I'm to be honest with you, in 2013 in the spring, I was let go from the sevens program, which was an extremely hard pill to swallow. I completely second-guessed my physicality, my rugby knowledge, my worth as a person, but definitely as a rugby player. I had a really great coach who said, listen, Andrea, you were just cut from the Canadian national sevens team. That effectively puts you up as one of the best top 80 women's rugby players in the world at this moment in time. Mm-hmm. You know what you're doing. You're not worthless. Just keep your head up and keep going. And so what happened then was moving from sevens to 15s. We're now moving into a 15 cycle with a 5-tournament, 5-tour schedule before going into the 2014 World Cup. in spring 2013, I didn't know if I was going to play rugby anymore. I didn't know if I was going to want to play, if I was good enough to play. I just went to the next camp. And after that camp, I just put my head down and worked out, and I went to the next camp. And it wasn't until June of 2014 that I really felt bought in to say, okay, I think I'll go to the World Cup. And that, of course, came on the heels of the letter saying, congratulations, you've been selected to the 2014 World Cup team.
Roller coaster ride and such a great career, and so glad that you're able to join us this week to do this. And I know that you do a lot of motivational speaking, and we get to see your face and hear your analysis on CBC, which is great.